538 electors today meeting in their own respective states to directly elect the next president of the United States. That should be Donald Trump, based on what we know about the state voting. You just heard from a former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton about whether there was interference and what that will mean today and going forward. Let's discuss all of the political machinations going on right now with David Drucker, senior congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner. And why did it happen? And how do you see the issue of Russia hacking and the implications of that hacking?
So I don't know why we can't both say that these things are events that we should pay attention to. Russia, as one of our biggest geopolitical adversaries, is always trying to sow problems in the U.S. system because they want advantage over us around the world. And Putin doesn't look at democracy and government the way we look at it. We look at elections as things that can be free and fair. He thinks everything's cooked. And so he's still mad at Hillary Clinton for supposedly fomenting democratic unrest in Russia years ago because she said a couple of things critical because it doesn't occur to him that people actually get upset at him and might want to go protest. At the same time, Hillary Clinton lost the election because she made a lot of mistakes. All right, she was supposed to go to Wisconsin as her first rally with President Obama. She was going to go to Green Bay. The terrorist attacks in Orlando happened. They had to cancel it. They ended up never going to Wisconsin with the candidate. That first rally was held in North Carolina instead. They made a lot of key mistakes. The Russians were also involved in trying to do a lot of bad things here. And both things can be true. And so I think that from a national security perspective, it's soon going to be Donald Trump's job to take care of that, because these are big problems that we have where Russia can intrude into our systems, where China can intrude into our systems. At the same time, I think the Democratic Party needs to take a look at why the voters that they thought they had in the bank in the Rust Belt, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota was very close and nobody thought it would be. Why did that happen, and how do they get those voters back so that 4 years from now they could have a different outcome?
David Gregory, you know, President Obama has said that he did try to address this with Vladimir Putin, and he addressed him directly. He told Vladimir Putin months ago to, quote, cut it out. How effective do we think that was, and what else can and should President Obama be doing?
I think what's really important now is that this gets taken out of the political context, because this is not going to do the country any good if this becomes something of a partisan fight. I think, as Chris just noted, the Electoral College wraps up his business, formally elects Donald Trump to be the 45th president of the United States. That's done. Now there needs to be an examination of an act of war against the United States by a foreign power trying to influence U.S. elections, for which there is apparently a lot of evidence to back it up. I think that evidence should be declassified in a way that is responsible, so that the new administration can get a look at it, as well as the current administration. The general public can have some level of satisfaction that this is not a partisan exercise. This should not be used to suggest that Hillary Clinton would have won the election if not for Vladimir Putin. But there's no question that Russia wanted to make her look bad, wanted to delegitimize her, and wanted to interfere in the election one way or the other to make America look bad. That's what has to be dealt with. And I think part of what we're seeing out of the new administration and the president-elect is, I think, a rather hasty reaction to all of this, assigning political blame rather than really trying to dig in and figure out what was at work here, how you respond to it, because this can happen again. And that's the responsibility of the administration, to understand it's not about him, and it's not about this election. For Kellyanne Conway, who is in her lane of politics, has to be, I think, be very careful about what she may not know about what the evidence here is, and just describing this in a political context instead of understanding what now does the United States do against a foreign power. It's much bigger than the sour grapes here.
You know, David makes the right point. It's way too much about Trump himself right now. That's why you get a Reince Priebus saying something that's just, you know, flagrantly untrue. That, hey, you know, the intel people should come out and tell us then. Clapper did it on October 7th. Kellyanne Conway saying that Obama is doing what the Clinton team's trying to get him. She doesn't know what that's about. She's just trying to distract. When he gets in the office, he'll have to own it. Part of the perspective on this, he is very gentle on Putin. Won't attack him. Won't say anything about Ukraine. Won't say anything about the hacking. But with China, put up his tweets, very aggressive. about the drone. He ignored that nuclear-capable bomber that flew over the South China Sea. But with the drone, he goes after them. He says, very bad thing to do. And then the next one, he says something odd about let them keep it. Why so aggressive on China, but so light on Russia?
Right, that's the big question, right? I mean, I think throughout the campaign, one of the things that Republicans, and I think a lot of people had trouble figuring out, is why Donald Trump was so friendly towards Vladimir Putin and dismissed everything negative about Putin with no political cost to him if he had criticized him. I mean,
because everything he says about his rationale for being nice to Russia is doubly true about being nice to China.
Exactly. What's wrong with, why can't we get along with China? I mean, what's so wrong with that? I mean, we can make the same argument. Look, I think that there's a key figure to watch in the Trump administration after he takes office, and that's Mike Pompeo, the Republican congressman from Kansas, who's going to be the CIA director. He is a hawk. He gets intel issues, and if he knows that there is a problem and bad activity going on from Moscow trying to mess with us, he's going to want to tell the administration, he's going to want to tell his boss, he's going to want to put that front and center. And if the administration squashes that, that's going to be on them, and that is going to tell us a lot about whether this thing with Trump is the latest iteration of U.S. presidents trying to make nice with Vladimir Putin. It didn't work for Bush, didn't work for Obama. I don't know why Trump thinks it would work for him.
And can I just add, I mean, think about the difficulty that Trump is now setting up for his national security team. An incoming CIA director who has to try to win the support of his rank and file within the CIA, knowing that his boss has just trashed the intelligence community. Very, very difficult. You also have a General Mattis, who is the incoming defense secretary, provided he gets a waiver and is approved, is voted on in the Senate, then he's someone who's more hawkish on Russia. I mean, there has to be a real meeting of the minds here to make sure that there's a coherent foreign policy, and then contrast that with what he's doing on China. There's every reason to say we'd like a more positive relationship with Russia, but there are boundaries. There are things that we are not going to allow Russia to do, and we're going to stand firm in that regard. That would be consistent, and at least be mindful of the fact that, as David says, 2 successive administrations have tried with Russia and been confounded and manipulated by Vladimir Putin. The question is, George W. Bush said he looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes and he saw someone he could trust. I'm curious to know what the president-elect sees when he looks at Vladimir Putin. I would like an answer to that question.
This does give Donald Trump an opportunity to say, I tried to make nice, it didn't work, and now we're going to play hardball. If he uses it, it's just there's been no indication that he's been willing to use it. I mean, there was a point at which during the campaign, somebody said, but Vladimir Putin imprisons journalists. And he said, I mean, look, we're not so nice either. So, I mean, the question about Russia and hacking is all really about Donald Trump, and not so much that whether or not it's happened. We know that it's happened. We know that they want it to happen. We know that this is how Vladimir Putin tries to make up for the fact that he can't compete with us militarily. And this goes back years ago. The USSR would always use the KGB and its intelligence services to try and make up for the fact that financially and with military hardware they couldn't keep up. It's the same old story. It's just we have a Republican president, it's very strange, that doesn't want to call Russia out.
Let's end on the First Ladies, the current First Lady and the future First Lady. We now know a little bit more about the conversation that they had when they met at the White House. Listen to this.
Do you have any advice for Mrs. Trump?
You know, I didn't. We talked about the kids, but, my offer to Melania was, you really don't know what you don't know until you're here. So the door is open, as I've told her, and as Laura Bush told me, and as other first ladies told me. So I'm not new in this going high thing. I mean, I'm modeling what was done for me by the Bushes.
Right.
And Laura Bush was nothing but gracious and helpful, and her team was right there for my team all throughout this entire 8-year process.
David, Gregory, it's nice to hear that the First Ladies have this bond and, this communication that will continue.
And a respect for how difficult it is to be in the public glare, which is what they both have experienced, and Melania Trump will now experience in a new way.
Davids, thank you for the bottom line.
Thank you very much.
All right, the Electoral College will ratify the election of Donald Trump later today. So what have Hillary Clinton's supporters soul-searching taught them? What would they do differently? Those answers next.